Welcome everyone. This is the Age-Friendly Pioneer Valley quarterly meeting. And the topic today is aging in place. So if you're just getting here, please put your name and organization and the town you represent in the chat. And we will share notes from the meeting in the chat afterwards. So I just have a couple of updates and announcements. Let me I'm going to share the screen again and get to the agenda. So we'll have some updates and announcements, and then we have a couple of speakers to speak about home modification, loan and grant programs that are available to communities in the region. So we'll have John O'Leary from PVPC and Mark Devlin from LifePath. And then we have 3 speakers on the neighbor networks that are currently in place in mostly in Hampshire County. So we have Northampton, Amherst, and Easthampton. And then we should have plenty of time for questions, and then we'll just have some small breakout group discussions. And then the last half hour I've left for a roundtable discussion, both about regional designation and if there's any topics that you want to discuss with other folks who are doing this work in other communities. So first announcement is we do have a website for Age-Friendly Pioneer Valley now, and I will put the link in the chat. So it's a fairly simple site. We have community pages right now just for the communities that we're working with to help with the age and dementia friendly designation process. So on those pages, we post surveys if they're still open, and we'll be posting draft reports. And then we do have recordings from all the past meetings. So if you missed any and you want to catch up, these are all on our YouTube channel, as well as some slideshows from some of the earlier presentations. Next thing is I am going to be working on a Pioneer Valley, age and dementia friendly Pioneer Valley designation. I've checked in with AARP and Dementia Friendly Massachusetts, and they think with the work we're doing, we can apply for regional designation. So we'll be sending out letters, requesting letters of support from leaders of communities, so both from the Council on Aging and community leaders, town managers or mayors, and we'll be building an advisory committee. Right now we have a small advisory committee to help with designing these regional meetings, but we'll want to start talking about regional designation as well. And so some of the work we're committing to is continuing to work with communities in our region on age and dementia friendly designation, so developing the community assessments and action plans. We do have another year of funding starting July 1st, and we do have room for other communities that want assistance doing specifically community-based plans. Otherwise, we're going to start working on a regional assessment, and I think that will be helpful for some of the more rural towns that might not have capacity to put together a whole working group. And we're also finding that a lot of the recommendations we're making are kind of the same in a lot of different communities. So we'll be developing a regional checklist with local and regional initiatives that the different communities you can decide what actions that you want to commit to for the next 5 years. This is a map of the region with different age and dementia friendly designations, and James is going to clarify the designation process in a minute, but the red hearts are communities that have age friendly designation and have submitted a community assessment and action plan to AARP. The purple hearts are the ones we're working with either now or we're sort of finishing up with a few communities. And then the purple hearts are the dementia friendly designation. So I think dementia friendly designation will be a great thing to do on the regional level, because especially if we're still doing online meetings, we can do regional meetings with the Alzheimer's Association and that kind of thing. So this is the age-friendly designation process through AARP, and I'm going to turn it over to James just for some clarification, because I know there's been a little bit of confusion about the different steps in the process. James, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Thanks, Becky, and good afternoon, everybody. Is my audio working?
Yeah.
Okay. Sometimes it cuts in and out, so you never know. So anyway, so everything that you see, whether it's the age and dementia friendly framework of the different focus areas, the program cycle, it's all sort of either a menu of options or a sort of guardrails, and it's not meant to say this is the way you have to do it. It's all within the context of what a community or region has at its disposal. So if you look at the program cycle on this slide, this is usually a 3 to 5 year process where communities commit to becoming age and dementia friendly, and then sort of, you within the 3 to 5 year range, you develop your action plan, you work to implement that plan, and I skipped over the part where you kind of do the community listening and conduct an assessment. So communities have gotten all of this done in a matter of a couple years. Assessment processes can last, anywhere from a couple of months to a year. It all depends on the capacity in communities and region. But in other parts of the country, what's been happening is that counties are getting a regional designation where you have one community in that county, usually the largest community in that county will be what's called the anchor community. And it's actually happened in the Berkshires, where Pittsfield and North Adams were the anchor communities, but the Berkshires as a region and as a county got sort of a regional designation. They could pull together regional partners to start working on things. So the advantage of doing this is in the Pioneer Valley is that, sometimes counties in Massachusetts don't really have the best defined structures. So with PVPC and some other groups in the region, you can start to work and think about regional, regional plans, regional housing production plans, regional transportation plans, just kind of put an age and dementia friendly lens on the work that goes on already, and kind of gives all the advocates, councils on aging, and others in this Zoom room another lens to approach work, and makes some room for other connections and partnerships to happen and be made. So a designation could look, on a regional level, could look different. It could be the existing communities would say that we've committed on an individual level, but we support a regional initiative. It could be Springfield and a couple other larger communities. It could be a sample pack of communities in the region that include urban and rural and suburban. There's really no quote unquote right way to do it, but this is all sort of a guideline to keep communities on a path of progress and keep advancing forward. So in addition to the support that Becky and PVPC have, I'm also a resource to help communities in the region approach this work and engage in this work, as is Mass Councils on Aging with the dementia-friendly side of things, and then AARP Massachusetts has a staff person dedicated to the age-friendly community side of this as well. So between all of us, we can support whatever the program cycle happens to be, then and gets figured out for the region or for communities. We're just here to support, a community on an individual level and a regional levels, vision of healthy aging. So I don't want you to think, okay, well, it's year 2 and we need to do X. Like it's kind of up to you. AARP and the World Health Organization that manage all of this just want to see communities making progress. And so if in 5 years you've done nothing, you might get a message from the World Health Organization asking, well, what the heck happened? But otherwise, you have a lot of support for doing this work, including state government. And so I hope that's helpful and maybe a little less intimidating for all this, but happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, James. And yeah, if anyone has questions, just go ahead and unmute. I'll stop sharing for a minute. Any quick questions? Okay. Thanks, James.
Nailed
it. Okay, and I'm going to share again. So next on the agenda, we have our discussion on aging in place, and we'll have John O'Leary from PVPC, and I see that Ted Harvey is also here. So John, I will turn it over to you, and I didn't know if you had slides, but you're able to share your screen if you are.
Okay, thank you, Becky.
Yeah.
The program itself. So the Home Modification Loan Program is a state-funded loan program that's essentially designed to lend funds to individual homeowners as well as landlords up to $50,000 to fund modifications, specifically accessibility related modifications to their home. These things can include wheelchair ramps, bathroom and kitchen modifications that again are geared towards making the space in the area more accessible. The loan is structured in a way that there are no monthly payments that are required, and it's 0% interest. The only time that the funding is recaptured is when the homeowner goes to sell or transfer the title of the home. This program allows the homeowners to choose their own contractors, being that they have the appropriate license and insurance that's required as part of their work. Yeah, I mean, that's really what the program is designed to do. And we do that so PVPC administers the program for all of Berkshire and Franklin County. And then we divvy up some communities in both Hampshire and Hampden County with Wade. And then as you move east throughout the state, several other provider agencies, RCAP, Solutions, and then, you know, so on. But yeah, primarily for our region, it's between PVPC and Wayfinders. I don't know if there are any questions about the Home Modification Loan Program.
Feel free to unmute. And then is Ted going to talk about sort of our approach changing to grant programs also? Or
Yes, I believe so.
okay.
Yeah, I can say something. I see that Maureen has a question down there.
Okay.
Yeah, hi, my name is Maureen. I'm one of the staff planners with the town of Amherst, and I'll just want to introduce everyone to Haley Bolton, the new Senior Service Director for the town of Amherst. So we're really excited to be here with you all. I just had a couple quick questions about this loan modification. So is there an age threshold that you need to meet for this to be eligible, or is this open to persons with disabilities? Yeah. And can we find, is there information found on like Wayfinder's website and like a flyer? I'm just thinking about how do we like promote this?
Yeah, absolutely. Good questions. So first off, there is no age restriction. So I mean, it can be any individual over 18, or it can be the parents of a child that is applying on their behalf. Yeah, there's no restrictions on the beneficiary themselves. There are income guidelines that are associated with the loan. They're very generous. They're not typically your HUD, you know, low mod income requirements. For example, I think for one person, it's upwards of like $80,000 in order to be income qualified. So it's not as stringent. And in most cases, majority of our applicants qualify in relation to income. So that shouldn't be too much of a barrier. And then to find the information, another good question. So we do have a page on our own website, www.pvpc.org. And I'm almost certain that, I know for a fact that Wayfinders also has that. But if you just Google search Home Modification Loan Program, it should be one of the first couple. Yeah.
But John, this is mainly for people with disabilities, right? And to modify homes for older adults who are starting to
yeah,
for
exactly. I mean,
prevention.
it could be could be physical or cognitive disabilities.
Okay.
And the program's really good in that it will consider almost anything that you can make a case for that's going to improve that individual's, you know, physical space.
And we do have someone in the office, Keith Robitaille, who is certified to do, I think it's aging in place walkthroughs. He got a certification, and you know, he has a list of the typical things that he looks for that. So Ted, do you want to talk a little bit about the grant program?
Yeah, sorry, my video's not working for some reason. Otherwise, I'd be on. Yeah, I'll just be very brief. My name's Ted Harvey. I'm also with the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission in the community development section. So a couple years ago, for many years, we help communities, smaller towns with their block grant applications to the state. And one of the main programs that we do is the housing rehabilitation program, which is all income based and also, you know, also great for aging as well. But about maybe was it three or so years ago, we kind of sought to modify that a little bit to see if we could really focus on more the aging population. So we started an Agawam, and we now have a small program in Easthampton as well. And then we put in an application for more funding in South Hadley and Hadley to do this. We call it aging in place. It's basically a housing rehab. It's a modified housing rehab program. Normally it's $35,000 to $40,000 loan, and then you get a lien on your property. In this case, it's a $5,000 up to a $5,000 grant. So there's no lien. There's no payback or anything like that. And it is specifically for aging in place. So there is an income, or there's an age limit. So it's 65 and older. It does have to follow the same income guidelines. And it's really supposed to be for specific things like grab bars, slip resistant treads, deadbolts, that kind of stuff, carbon monoxide detectors, things that would help you know, homeowners stay in their house longer. So that is a fairly new program, and it's all grant dependent, number one. So I can't say it's not like the HMLP program where it's kind of available to everybody to, you know, in the 4 counties. So it's dependent on if we get funding for these communities through the CDBG program. But right now, like I said, we did start it in Agawam. There is funding in Easthampton available as we speak, and hopefully we'll find out in the next couple of weeks if there's funding in South Hadley and Hadley. And it's at least in Agawam, and so far in Easthampton, it's been super popular and very successful. And the hope would be to continue for the towns that we have CDBG with, to expand to them and kind of increase this program going forward. And also I don't believe Agawam was definitely the first, at least CDBG funded type of program like this. And I don't know if there are any other ones, again, CDBG funded in the state, but this would hopefully be a model as we go forward for other towns to use. So yeah, that's basically it. I just wanted to throw that out there as something that we've started doing, and hopefully we'll continue doing.
There's a couple questions. Do you guys assist people with the applications for the home loan modification and I guess the grant program as well?
Yes, we do.
Okay, great.
A question about the grant program. If they have a project that, for example, like a ramp, that's going to be probably more than the $5,000. If they could secure the funding, like the balance of the funding elsewhere, is that still something they could apply for, or is it like set at $500 and that's the most the project can be?
No, that's a good question. It's just the most that the grant can be. So yes, to answer your question, if there was other funding available. So for example, we have in Agawam, we did combine some of them with the actual housing rehab program. So they got the full housing rehab program, and then they also got this $5,000 grant. And there's maybe one or two other times I'm thinking of where it combined with some other source of funding. So yeah, you could do something like that as well.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Thanks. Okay, and then we have next Mark Devlin from LifePath to talk about a new grant program that LifePath got to do some similar type of work.
Hi, everyone. Let's see if I can hit all the appropriate buttons and make this work. Is my screen shared?
Yep, we see your slide there.
Can you see one another? Becky, nice to meet you. I see Diane. I think I've met James, so thanks for including me. I don't know how well you're going to be able to see this. Let me say at the beginning and end one, I need to leave a little early, so I need to jump off about 1:45. But please feel free to reach out to my email or phone and answer anything I don't manage to address in our few minutes here. I hope you can see my little red highlighter to try to draw your attention if you have the same difficulty I do of listening and reading and pressing your face against screens for small print. So what I want to do is talk about what, let me know if you're not familiar with LifePath. You know, we're one of 25 such nonprofits across the state, serving older adults, individuals with disabilities, and their caregivers with programs supporting independent living. We're Greenfield based, and we serve Franklin County in what's called the North Quabbin area. But Becky asked me to come and talk about a HUD grant, and this HUD grant that I'll define in a moment fits into what LifePath is calling its home safety program. So I'll briefly hit our approach to home safety. It picks up well where I think it was Ted was speaking, where Ted left off. So for LifePath, home safety is about supporting the option to remain at home and age in place, and doing so through improvement in safety, functioning, and homeowner satisfaction. Improvement in safety is about eliminating hazards, reducing risks such as falls. Improved functioning can be improving access to or easing use of. And really importantly, this work is person-centered and goal-oriented. I'll talk about the partnership that formed this grant in a second that is HUD funded, and HUD uses the language of low cost, low barrier, high impact home modifications, and that pretty well speaks to the work that we'll be doing under the grant. I recognize this page is far too busy for this group, but let's see again if I can call out key pieces. The name of the grant is Older Adult Home Modification Program. I have in the chat, I'll hit send in just a moment, the website that Community Action is housing, so you can get access to this data that's down in the bottom right-hand corner. A webpage where you can pick up the email or the phone number to gather more information or to apply. So let me jump to the top left-hand corner, talk about benefits to the consumer, and then jump in the middle and talk about the program more generally. It's already been said on this call, this is sort of a holistic home safety approach. So some 70-point safety assessment is performed in the presence of the occupational therapist and one of two certified aging in place specialists. I am one at LifePath. I have a counterpart at Community Action. His name is Mike Browski. Mike is also CAPS certified, as we say. The dollars can range. There is no cost to the consumer. There's no cost sharing here. This is a grant, not a loan. Depending on what we see, we can apply to HUD for more monies, but they suggest the average cost will be $3,000. And this is a brand new program, by the way. It's the doors have really just opened, and no work has yet been done that's not been about forms and policies and procedures. So the application process has just started. I already hit this bullet about the values of improved safety and enhanced functioning and the like. It's a 3-year grant and $1 million. We have plans to impact some 170 plus homeowners, about 50 to 60 a year for each of 3 years. Homeowners who reside in Franklin or Hampshire County, or in the 4 towns of the North Quabbin. That's the area served by the grant. That's a hard and fast. So my apologies to anyone outside of that range. The work team, the occupational therapist, this is one of the values that LifePath brought to the equation. Our clinical staff, our subject matter expertise around working with older adults. And what Community Action brings to the equation, among other things, is their expertise in working with licensed contractors, largely through their fuel assistance programs. LifePath also brings a strong volunteer network, particularly in Franklin County. And skilled volunteers will be used to do that work that's permissible by code and recommended for safety purposes, because the more we can do with volunteers in terms of installation, the further we can go for more homeowners. Eligibility, you'll see on the website that I'll pass the link to, but generally speaking, they are lower income homeowners age 62 and up. So there's not a disability call out, if you will. So let me jump to my chat and see if I can't. Boy, I seem to have lost my controls. Becky, you're gonna have to kick me out here at some point. But let me open up to any questions. I want to be mindful of time because I appreciate that. I think I've used our 5 minutes.
Okay. Oh, there we go.
Thank you. And I will hit the send on the chat.
Any quick questions? We are running a little long, so nothing urgent. You have Mark's, or Mark, can you put your email in the chat too? And then if people have questions on this, they can email you. I'd like to move on to the neighbor networks. So we have, I'm just going to start sharing again. So we are fortunate to have today Diane Porcella from Northampton Neighbors, Liz Welsh from Amherst Neighbors, and Stephanie Kelly, who helped to start Easthampton Neighbors. So I want to start with Northampton and Diane, and I have your slides. So just let me know when you want to switch slides. There we go. Oh, and you're muted. Diane,
Okay.
there you go.
I am Diane, and I am the director of Northampton Neighbors, and you can hit the next slide, please. What we did this year, or last year, is we invested in our story. After a bunch of years we decided it was time to take a beat, and our board and communications professionals refined what Northampton is for us and for our community. And we upped our communications game to be stronger in print and digital and voice communications. It's kind of working. Our listserv is pretty active. We've got a bi-monthly newsletter, but our Zoom meetings are closed captioned. And we're working to meet people where they are. And that has turned out to be our biggest challenge, is to kind of improve. I think we were a little lazy before COVID. with our communications, and I think we've gotten a little bit better at it. For many of us, and if you go on to the next slide, for many of us, the past few years have meant a lot of screen time. So our tech teams have worked virtually and in person to help our members know and navigate the digital options like Skype and Zoom. And we also offer online classes and events, and that not only that we host, but that others host. Many of our programs went virtual and then live for those few glorious weeks this summer, and are now back to virtual. And what we're doing is we see the value in investing in hybrid models moving forward, so that even when we do come together again, we'll have options for those that are virtual. And the next slide is, we learned a lot in our rush very early to connect in the pandemic about 2 years ago, to connect with every member. And we found that our membership was fearful, resilient, and ready to roll up their sleeves to figure out what to do. And in a time when we all needed to physically distance, we learned new ways to stay connected. And that's been our theme over the past year, and our goal and our challenge and our success. So what we've found in the last 2 years is that it is good to start increasing meaningful engagement. And this is a threat to isolation when you are meaningfully engaged. And it also helps a little bit with COVID fatigue as well. So the next slide is, one of the ways we did that is through our neighborhood circles, where people who are geographically close to each other have found each other even on Zoom, that they never met on the block, but they have found each other on Zoom. And this introduction seems to ease a path for asking or offering neighborly help. The other thing that's been really successful is the next slide, which is a connecting point of our interest groups. They open a door to explore something new, or cultivate something dear, or sometimes just take a walk. And we've really seen them flourish in this past year. And it's really gratifying, because this is a member-driven element of Northampton Neighbors, and we're pretty proud that it's grown so much. And the next slide is we join with other service, community, and faith-based organizations to increase opportunity and awareness of healthy aging at every age. Most recently, we joined with youth groups to distribute VaxFax information door to door all over the city. We offer monthly Dementia Friends trainings, and have partnered with Cooley Dickinson Hospital on the Pioneer Valley Memory Care Initiative. We're developing partnerships at Forbes Library and the YMCA and others to cross-share our programs and services. And we really feel like this exchange of ideas and services strengthens the give and take. And in turn, it makes all of us more visible and valuable to each other. And we see this as an important way to partner with our members to help Northampton Neighbors reflect the range of our needs and our capacities too. One of the questions that was posed to us is, if a person wanted to start a village, what do you do? Well, the Village to Village Network, their website is there. They have a whole toolkit for how to start. I think a trick is to start small, and to start with something that's meaningful to you. This isn't easy work, so it helps when there's some heart in it as well. If you want to start a village, start, with 3 people, and then grow it that way. So I hope I haven't taken up too much over my 5 minutes with our successes and failures, but there you go. That's Northampton Neighbors.
Thank you, Diane. I'm going to move on to the next couple, and then if there's questions afterwards, we'll come back to questions. So next we have Amherst Neighbors, and I'm going to stop sharing because I think Liz is going to just speak with us directly. Liz, are you up there?
Yes. Well, thank you for asking us to speak. I really appreciate it. So we have been in the making for about 3 years, actually maybe more now. Anyway, we were set to launch right as COVID hit, but at that point, we really went to kind of virtual events was really how we started. We now have probably about 250 members, and I would say almost a quarter of those are people who have been reaching out to us since the spring and summer when we started to offer volunteer services. And so we've continued to do that. We have probably, I think about 40 volunteers. So almost equal number of volunteers to people who are asking for services, for volunteer services. It's a very exciting moment for us right now and challenging in the midst of what's going on with the numbers in this very moment. And so we're finding that we have to be a little bit like an accordion and kind of float and adjust as time goes on. And I'm kind of happy this time we've decided to pull back a little bit from personal services or face-to-face services, I should say. We're not in this very doing things inside people's homes, but short of that, we're doing everything else, including we are offering transportation to medical appointments just because, you know, we've developed relationships with people we see who's helped by that and who really doesn't have alternatives. And so we're taking added safety precautions. We're helping people as they need, both volunteers and others, to get tested, and also providing KN95s or N95s for anybody who's providing transportation. So we're just taking a few extra measures to make sure that everybody's safe. And many of our volunteers are saying, yeah, I want to keep doing this. And some are saying, I'm just going to take a little bit of break for the moment. So it's just nice to be able to be flexible. It's nice to be able to be flexible, even though I'm kind of, at certain moments, I appreciate the gray, and at other moments, I like black and white, but it's good. So that's where we are. And we're really, we have a new staff person who's part-time, who started just a few months ago, and that's making a huge difference. Anyway, so, and we're continuing to offer programs, which is a big way that we are also doing outreach to a variety of organizations to let them know kind of what's the range. And we appreciate getting information from other villages or other organizations, and we share those with our members as well. So that happens very informally. Anyway, so that's kind of where we are in the moment. It's challenging, but it's really fun. And I actually really, over COVID, the thing that we kind of got better at is, you know, especially with an all volunteer organization, you do what you can and you don't have to be in a rush. And, you know, sometimes you just go slower and everybody's fine with that. So, and I agree, you figure out where your heart is and that's where you go with it. So.
Great.
That's it. And Haley, I'm looking forward to meeting you, by the way.
Oh, great. Me too.
Oh, nice to see your face. I will be in touch.
You're not talking to me. You're talking to Haley
Oh.
Bolton.
Yeah,
Oh,
Yeah.
we're looking forward to meeting you too, Liz.
Where
and
are
Haley.
you? I can't see you. Are you? Oh, well, anyway, I'll be in touch. Sorry. It was the one Haley saw.
All right, so we're
Thank
moving on
you.
to Stephanie for Easthampton, and I'll pull up your diagram, Stephanie.
Okay, thanks.
There you go.
So I took another tactic because, like Amherst, we're pretty new in terms of trying to launch. I'll do the timeline in a minute, and then having COVID. So we're nowhere near as advanced as Northampton Neighbors. So I thought I'd take the tactic of showing you all right from the beginning how we're set up, and maybe in terms of other villages that you might be talking to, or when you hear about other villages who want to start up. As Diane said, you can start just with a few people. It doesn't have to be some major organizational push. That's exactly what happened with Easthampton. That's our story. I got the idea and I went to, as you can see in our diagram, we're very close to Easthampton Council on Aging. So we actually formed a collaboration at first. So one of the first things I would say in terms of advice is obviously go through your resources in your community, find out the major forces behind Age Friendly and try to go to somebody who can help you there. So that's exactly what happened. The executive director and I started up our Easthampton Neighbors, our own little village. And again, it's Village to Village Network is your main site nationally to find out where all the villages are and how they're tailor-made to communities and how you're going to tailor-make your own village. One thing I would say here too in the beginning, and I know it comes across a lot in the previous regional analyses, think regional too, especially now where a lot of the smaller communities have formed or are forming. It might be a good idea to team up geographically. And again, that's why I wanted to be on this meeting today, because I think Easthampton Neighbors is at the point where, for a lot of reasons, I'll get to that in a while, we need to have regional perspectives and regional support. So to look at the diagram again, you just begin with a steering committee, and then you obviously set your board of directors and you have all your goals and responsibilities laid out. We started in July 2019. And then you get your core groups formed and they split out. As you can see, you start forming your volunteers, you start getting your members. And what you're doing, as you all know, the concept is to match up volunteers with services. So people call in and they have a service they need, somebody who's over 55 who wants to stay at home. That's the main mission. You set them up with volunteers and you do that with software. So again, you have the staff people in line, like Amherst just got a staff person and Northampton has Diane, but Easthampton still doesn't have any paid staff. We're still all volunteer. So you asked in the beginning, what are the successes and what are the challenges? Well, I'll talk about successes in a minute, what we did with COVID, but I would say the biggest challenge Easthampton has had is direct support in terms of funding and terms, the whole fundraising thing has been very difficult. Again, I think standing alone on your own is difficult. I think regionally, especially since COVID hit, it would be so helpful to pool your resources. That's why I'm so interested in what's happening on the regional scale with Age Friendly and the Dementia program and everything else. So then you have the coordinators, as you can see, who are set up, and we have all this set up. We're doing fine in Easthampton. The services have been going really well. Again, with all volunteer people, we actually got grants to get us through COVID. We stayed open, and I didn't want to put up all the stats because it would take much too long, but our services were 650 over COVID, when a lot of villages just shut down completely, because we go on village calls and a lot of villages just shut down. But we got a Massachusetts Service Alliance grant, and the 3 prongs for that were meeting food insecurity, medical transportation, and social isolation. So we managed to meet all those goals. Again, I can't repeat enough, with all volunteers and with the in and outs of COVID and with all the restrictions, we ended up with the 650 services. We met the goals for the grant. We did extremely well. And the social isolation, as Diane in Northampton knows, has even blossomed in Easthampton. And we're looking to hopefully join the Pioneer Valley Memory Care Initiative, because we ended up with a really strong group of volunteers who turn out to be gerontology specialists, and they're doing really good work. But again, we need people, we need resources to help us to have that pathway also. So that's where we sit right now. Again, I would say successes are keeping open during all that, getting the grants we needed. We're still actively doing more grants. And by the way, in terms of the timetable, I stepped down as president recently. I did 2.5, almost 3 years. We have a new president now, so that's a good thing. I think the changes are good. I'm sitting on the committee on grant writing and fundraising. So we're working on the grants. But again, I would say our biggest challenge has been the support from the business community. And of course, a lot of that fault, you can't have blame on businesses with all that they've been through. So we need help there, but the successes again are just, we're just thriving in terms of members and volunteers and active services. Thanks.
Great, thanks so much. Does anyone have questions for Stephanie or Diane or Liz? And feel free to just unmute. I guess I have a question for Diane and Liz, and that is, how do you fund your staff person? Is that town funding or do you get grants for that?
Liz, may I jump in there?
Absolutely.
Northampton Neighbors Board works very hard to obtain grants and donations. That's how we fund it. But for the most part, we have just a big pot of money and it all goes in there. And then eventually it all just comes to me. But yeah, we do a combination. And you're right. Fundraising is hard. You're absolutely right, Stephanie, and it's tricky. And we don't have a good answer for it, honestly, of how to do it. We're getting a little better at it, but it's tough. You're right.
And most of our money it has been from individual donations. We had a few grants, very small grants early on, larger donations early on. So we are, it could turn into a wing and a prayer, and that we've kind of stockpiled a bunch of money. So we've got enough for a year, and we are banking that we're going to be able to continue to raise money. So I wish we had more to tell you. We're going to be busy on this front.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions out there? Okay. If not, we are going to do some breakout rooms just to have some quick discussions about what your greatest challenges are for people aging in place in your community, and then what could be accomplished at the local or regional levels. And I am going to put you into just small groups, and we'll report back. And so these are just self-facilitated. So let's see, we have 28, I'll go to about 5 groups. And so just click on the invitation when you get it.
Take those tests and so on and so forth.
So, be what it is what it is. Let's put it that way.
Do you live in Belchertown?
I do indeed. I'm actually going to be walking distance to the senior center now too, because they've put in some new sidewalks and so on and so forth. So anyway, so
Belchertown has been working on age and dementia friendly, yes?
yes, we've got a group together, and actually we have our first meeting scheduled the last Wednesday of the month. I forget what the date is, but it's the last Wednesday of the month, although I don't know if we've decided on a time yet. But that we've got the group together. It's been supported by the Board of Selectmen, and we'll see what comes out of that. But again, it's really been coordinated primarily through Jessica, who's our senior center director, and she does, I think, a really good job of managing things. And that's one of the things that was mentioned before about the need for a staff person, and that makes such a difference. If most people are volunteers, because if you're relying on volunteers to pull things together, it's not their job necessarily. They may take it as a responsibility, but if something comes up in their life and so on and so forth, if certain circumstances change, that can lead to some problems in terms of maintaining continuity, if you will. Again,
right.
Going back to my years as an elder service planner, communities that had, let's say, councils on aging that had a staff person were much more active, much more coordinated than small communities where there was no staff person. It was all volunteers. It was very hit or miss with an all volunteer organization. So it's difficult to manage that.
Right.
I just want to make sure you guys could see the questions. Did you see the questions in the chat? The greatest challenges?
No.
Okay.
No, we're just going off on going on tangents here.
Here, I'll put this.
Oh, it's in the chat. Okay. See, this is maybe just enlarge that up. Okay, here we go. In the chat. So
I'm just going to pop to other rooms to make sure.
Questions.
People,
what are the greatest challenges? Oh yeah, challenges.
Well, getting
the thing off the ground is a challenge. And that's, I say, we've got it established and we've got a plan. I think that we've got support from the selectmen. We've got support from the players in town that have been designated, at least those who are participating in the group. Again, the group is not going to have a meeting for another couple of weeks. I think it's 2 weeks from tomorrow, we have our first meeting. So it remains to be seen what's going to happen. Nothing has really happened yet, let's put it that way, other than getting the plan developed and getting it approved and starting to build some kind of an infrastructure. Other than that,
Jessica's been the director there for a long time, right? Or quite a while?
Not a super long time, a few years. Yeah, she came from Granby. She was the senior center director at Granby, and then came to Belchertown 4 years, 3, 4, 5, within the past few years. She's been there about like 5 years. I don't know, because she's been involved with the COA longer than I have. So.
Yeah, I think I know her, and I've done some dementia education programs at the Belchertown Senior Center. That was a few years ago.
Did you do so? Were you one of the ones that did one of the online things that we did as part of our needs assessment?
Yes, Megan, you did the forum, the public forum.
We had a public forum there that was online, that was, not well attended, shall we say. Again, in the middle of COVID and so on and so forth, but it was useful. It was useful in getting an understanding out there. And we did get at least some degree of participation from the community. So that was good. Limited though it be.
Yes, okay, now I'm remembering. Sorry, I cover all of Western Mass, so I'm like, I have to remember all the towns, but yes.
So I'm just going to jump to another room, but I'm going to leave the rooms open till about 2:15 or maybe 2:10. 2:10. Let me just see. Oh, it's only giving us 3 minutes. I'll have to see if I can change that.
I'll let you do that.
Okay. Let's see. Oh, here we go. I can broadcast a message to all.
Benjamin, did you want to unmute? I don't know if you wanted to participate or.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
oh, yeah.
Now.
Sorry about that. Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have cameras on these computers here, so you won't be able to see me, but that's not a great
Sometimes
loss
that's
there.
better.
Anyways, so just wanted to hop on here, say I'm representing the Pioneer Valley Transit Authority, and I know that most of the time we think about the, regular sized buses you see, but we work a lot with elderly. We have dial ride services for those that aren't in the ADA. They don't fall under ADA, but we do have dial ride in quite a few communities. There's many participating communities as well that are outside of the regular normal Springfield area that we service. And so we work a lot with the elderly, and, thinking about that question there, what's one of the greatest challenges is that they need a lot more medical care than the average person. And oftentimes when they need medical care, it's like next day, the doctor wants to see them the next day. It's
have needs and who have considerable
the pandemic influence and what that's happening on availability of services, et cetera, and some strong feeling for a regionalization approach. We certainly got more detail from Stephanie about what they were able to get with the grant that allowed the Easthampton Neighbors group to stay functioning in person, including dividers for cars, so that drivers and passengers felt safe. Anyone want to add to that? No. Guess not.
Just one thing was the importance of regionalization and having more access to either grant money or resources that smaller towns have difficulty tracking down on their own. So that is a big part of the regionalization process, is having the ability to pool resources and opportunities.
Great. Thanks. How about group 2 was Giselle, Jennifer, Kathy Peterson, Kathy Service, and Nicole. Anyone from group 2?
I can start. So I feel like most of what we talked about was just how there's so many great services for aging in place. But right now with COVID, it's a little bit difficult without as many workers, but it's more so just being able to connect all those resources so people know what is actually available to them and how to get it in conjugate care and in just their homes. But feel free to add on to that.
We kind of also touched on the socialization piece and how important that is to staying home. So yeah, that was the second part.
Yeah, and also, the value, figuring out, because it's no matter where you go, it's a risk, and trying to figure out what safeguards, you can put in place in terms of minimizing risk. There's a lot out in the gerontological literature about, the problems with social isolation and, in terms of keeping people safe, but then how can you, what can you do instead, and how can you reduce or mitigate some of that risk? I think that's also an issue in terms of, and there's different models of support to try to provide socialization opportunities.
Thanks. About room 3, that was a very small room with John and
well, initially we were talking a little bit about dementia issues and that sort of thing. And then the second part, we're talking more about transportation issues. And that's largely what we focused on. It's just basically,
I guess looking at accessibility beyond just again, I'm in Belchertown. We do have, shall we say, a volunteer medical transportation program that will get people will take other elders in their cars, their own vehicles, and that sort of thing. That's limited, obviously, by the number of volunteers. But we were also looking at the regional transit sort of perspective as well, and we were at the very end. We were talking about routes and so on and so forth. So, for example, in Belgium, putting bus stops where, or being aware of new elder housing developments, if you will, you might want to increase the number of, or relocate or create new bus stops when new developments come up. And we were using specifically in Belchertown, where the state school, there already is some elder housing there that is going to be further developed. That's part of the plan over the next few years. Currently, I think the bus stops at the Common, and it might be worthwhile down the road, once this is fully developed, to extend it down the hill to near where the senior center is, part of what the old state school is, and put a bus stop down there, which again, it's maybe another third of a mile or something like that, or whatever, but it would allow for accessibility of that elder housing that is going to be expanded in that area down the road. Again, it's part of planning. It's part of looking at where the demand is likely to be. And I imagine a lot of other communities are going to see the development of further forms of elder housing, that those locations probably need some form of transportation, or may need some form of transportation to address the needs of the people that live there. Because, I mean, change happens.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Okay, group 4 was Anna, Liz, and Marie.
The issues we talked about were, we started with technology, transportation, and care, with challenges for those those were the big 3 areas. I don't know, would you guys like to add to that, or add details or anything?
Well, I guess the staffing shortage is causing great suffering. And so, I mean, with the technology, we started out talking about how, there's a lot of access issues, but then also just issues around people not being ready or willing, or overwhelmed by having to learn. And so, but when it comes down to just basic survival needs of not having a caregiver to come into the home, like that's really what takes the precedent. And so, getting online seems, like a peripheral issue at that point, I think, to people. But I was, we didn't get to this, but someone else said this too. I think it's people not knowing about what's available is really also an issue. And so, no matter how hard we try to collaborate and regionalize that information, like people are getting it from so many different ways and sources that it's really hard to make sure that they get the right information. So I think that's kind of where we're struggling in Northampton, is just to meet each person where they're at and try and get all the bases covered in terms of what we're putting out and where, so that people get that information.
Are staffing shortages, is that mainly caregivers or home health type providers, or is it also at the senior center? And
oh no, we were talking about home care workers, okay. Like that people, sometimes those were the people that an older person would see, that was their socialization, or it filled some socialization needs, but it also just filled basic, survival needs, and so I think that the isolation that people are experiencing is just like being compounded tremendously because they're not getting those services.
Yeah.
This is also at the centers too, because of COVID, people are calling out, nurses are calling out, centers are closing, in the interim, but it's also at, hospitals everywhere. I mean, there's a big staff shortage, but home care is getting hit harder.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, I come from the ASAP world, and we're seeing it with our home health aides, but also PCAs. And even like our ombudsman and our assisted living ombudsman, they're saying the same thing. They're getting a lot more complaints because of low staff.
Yeah.
And
Okay,
you know,
thanks. So one more group 5. That was Diane, Haley, James, and Janine. And Nancy.
I don't mind jumping in. We talked a little bit about what the territory Marie just covered well, the home care worker shortage, and how crucial that can be. Lack of housing options, few options for being able to downsize and make a decision based on planning about where you're going to end up from your big home that you can't handle anymore. And of course, tech access, which we all know is a barrier, continues to be, and transportation. For example, getting folks to clinics in larger cities and relying on volunteers, and there may not be enough volunteers to provide transportation to larger hospitals or clinics and specialists out of town, that kind of thing.
Thanks. Anyone else from 5? Is James still here?
Still here.
Okay. Couldn't see you. What's the conversation at the state level about staffing shortages? Is there, I mean, and is this directly related to COVID, or was it a problem before COVID?
I mean, if we're talking about home care, then staffing has always been a problem. Like as long as anybody can remember, staffing has been a problem. The turnover rate in home care is always high. I mean, you lose, traditionally speaking, I think the stat was you lose, 1 out of every 3 workers that you hire within a certain number of months. So because during COVID, it's not just nurses and aides that are calling out, but people are canceling visits or services entirely. So that makes scheduling services for agencies more unpredictable, and that doesn't work well for keeping staff and retaining staff when you lose that predictability. So, I think it's always been a challenge. It's just more of a challenge now. But some federal programs and some leniency on the state level has helped, address some things and kind of support home care workers in different ways, but it needs to continue beyond whatever we're calling the current moment at the current moment. But yeah, that's, I think what everybody talked about on a local level is certainly true on a state and broader level.
James, I was wondering, I mean, we were asking about this when we were talking about the incentives that are being, if there are, I mean, I'd heard about some incentives being made for, they're temporary, I guess, the increase in wages, and they're going to go back down again. Like, it just seems like there won't be any people to take care of us if we don't do something. And there aren't any people who want to go into the field. And like, if this is being looked at on a much bigger level on raising the pay rate indefinitely.
So, depending on how you want to look at it, Massachusetts continues to raise the minimum wage. So I think in this state, we're in slightly better shape, but that still doesn't get you to where you need to go. So the Paycheck Protection Program and a bunch of other federally supported programs, just to not push workers off, the so-called benefits cliff, has been used for things like public transit or childcare services or other things that home care workers tend to need to work. And so that could be another strategy of supporting workers. And, you know, in any industry right now, I think it's hard to get people to work and do in-person stuff. So, you know, if you're a home care agency and you're not paying a certain wage and you're not offering those incentives for the other stuff that, you know, helps people to come to work and do their job, I don't think you're going to have workers. I think these agencies and directors and CEOs realize this, and there's a lot more support coming in. And also telehealth. I mean, you could see, like, you know, there's leniency on remote patient monitoring, and not just like zooming to a doctor visit, but having, you know, vital signs monitored and that kind of thing. And, you know, just checking in with people to say, like, how are you feeling today on a behavioral health level? So hopefully there's going to be some reimbursements for some of that stuff as well, which home care agencies can do. And that gives home care workers other stuff to do besides, you know, the traditional services that they're used to. Oh, and I froze.
I think you're still there.
I think I'm still here. It's hard to tell though.
You're still there. So we're almost at 2:30. Our next meeting is going to be in April. Don't have a specific date yet, and the topic will be transportation. But so if you have any other suggestions or comments about this meeting, put them in the chat now. Also, I'm inviting all of you to stay for the last half hour to talk about regional designation. But if you need to leave now, that's fine too.
If my Zoom continues to work, I'll stay. I can't see anybody. Everybody's frozen on my end.
Oh, we can see you. Can you hear me?
The sound is working. The video's just decided it's done.
Wow. Okay.
I'm just gonna hang out for a minute.
Okay. Great. So I think it's great if you all want to stay. And I guess, are there any other topics folks would like to discuss other than the regional designation? Any challenges you're running into or looking for best practices, questions? Okay, if not, and I don't, let's see, I have another screen here. So what I'm thinking for the regional designation is to send out an email looking for letters of support from any community that we can get in the Pioneer Valley. So that's Hampden and Hampshire counties. So if you folks are all in support of that, I would love some help in getting in touch with your town leaders to get a letter of support. But I guess I also wanted to just brainstorm on, you know, what are some things that you think would be a good argument for doing regional designation, and what would be helpful to your community. And I think one of the things I've heard is, you know, rural areas could really benefit from sort of the regional approach and access to funding, but just throw it out there, get any other input from everyone.
I had a question. I don't know, is the sort of, I don't know, say interaction or whatever versus individual cities, towns going for, as in the past, going for age-friendly, dementia-friendly versus regional designation, et cetera. How do you see that differing or the same, or is it just all, you know, into one big pie, or what is that about? If you can explain to me, please.
Yeah, so we will continue to offer individual communities assistance with designation. And so I think that the individual community approach and the reason I started with individual communities is I think each community is a little different, and especially for the larger ones, you know, you have sort of different leverage points where you can ask for change, and some of that's zoning, some of that's, you know, local budgets, you know, the local senior center. But there are some communities that may not have a senior center or have a shared senior center. I know the hill towns went in as a sort of a sub-region, but I think they're interested in possibly doing a regional dementia friendly designation, so we can kind of have regional presentations on dementia and really do that in the online format. So, and I think there are also just some things on the regional level that make sense to look at, you know, like transportation and even housing.
No, this was really beneficial. I can understand that by all means. I just didn't know in terms of, you know, in terms of processing or proceeding forward, you know, with some of those, the individual designation, because I've been working on dementia friendly communities since 2016, way back. So, you know, in terms of how does that, you know, just trying to figure out the role and how does that differ and stuff.
And remind me, what community are you in?
Northampton.
Northampton, right, okay.
Yeah, I know that, you know, we've done a lot of work on age friendly, and we've had, you know, following the AARP guidelines, et cetera. And Marie has, you know, there's a report coming forward. But then, you know, I was just trying to figure out, then do you proceed like because my interest is dementia friendly through MCOA and going through that whole process or not?
Yeah, and we've actually been working on that report for Northampton to be a dual designation. Yeah, so we'll submit that to Dementia Friendly Massachusetts also.
And Becky, if I can just piggyback onto what Kathy said, not to always look back to you, but I think it might be helpful if there's a short, the benefits, I mean, particularly, you know, if Marie is to go to the new mayor who knows that Northampton's already designated age friendly, why should she say, oh yeah, let's go regional? What are the benefits to communities who already have age friendly designation, in our case of a plan? I mean, I think we can articulate some of them, but I think coming from you and a consistent message would be really helpful.
No, I agree, Cindy. I think that'd be great.
Okay.
And I think we have benefit every community, regardless of what stage they're in.
Yeah, and some, you know, some areas like the Berkshires and Franklin County went in as a region from the start. And, you know, I think the reason I didn't do that is I think you get more buy-in when you start locally. You know, the first sort of sub-region I did was Chicopee, Holyoke, and South Hadley. And that was just too big of a population and too different of towns to really make that work as a region. But I think as a larger region with a number of communities that have already sort of gone through the process and kind of know, you know, where some of the challenges are, then there's the opportunity to go together as a coalition, you know, with this home health care. You know, that's a perfect example of, if every community is facing that, what are some policy changes we could, you know, all be behind on a state or federal level going forward. But I also want to hear from all of you and just see what other benefits that you think, you know, would you could get from a regional designation, and if you think it would be helpful.
I'm afraid I need some selling points. We've tried consortiums and we have benefited in some route to consortiums, but then they all kind of fell apart. At least the Southern Hilltowns Consortium ended up falling apart. But because of differences, as we don't really need that service. Yes, we do need that service, and feeling of how to support the people in aging in place and what the priorities were, parties versus resources. So I need more selling as to why this will benefit the smaller hill towns when we have a hard enough time people participating with people they know than having to come to people they don't know. I'm not quite clear how this would benefit the hill towns.
Okay. Yeah.
I kind of feel it does benefit the hill towns because you'll get a more agencies will want to provide services there. I do business development, so more agencies will be aware of the need. And as people in business want to expand, they'll expand to those areas to a regional view of it.
Yeah, and I guess part of what we could offer is, you know, to do a survey where we could administer it online, just to get some of that data. You know, what are some of the challenges of people living in those communities, and you know, also with a lot of our community engagement online, it's going to be difficult to actually get out to communities. But if we can get, you know, even someone from each community to sort of jump on and say, yeah, we're facing these similar issues, I think that would be helpful. But I do understand it doesn't always work. But I think it would be a commitment on the part of us as a regional agency to say, you know, we're going to continue moving forward to help communities become age and dementia friendly.
I had a question here. You know, are there any, there's a real diversity of different types of communities that we're talking about here. Are there any, shall we say, models or experiences from elsewhere in the nation where they brought together diverse sets of communities, from small communities to larger communities, and how they collaborated together, ones that have been, you know, successful models that are currently operating, perhaps? Do you know of any of that, anything that would fit that sort of model that might serve as a paradigm that we could to build off of? Not to say you can take something from, say, Indiana and transpose it to Massachusetts, but it might provide some ideas as how that might be set up and how it might work.
James, you had said that there were some counties going in other places, and how do they?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much most of the rest of the country.
It's on the county basis.
Will engage, you know, a combo platter of communities and counties, but there's a lot of counties involved. You know, California. A lot of the western states come to mind. Florida has at least one county that I know of. You know, whatever county has Sarasota, it might even be Sarasota County, I'm not sure, but either way, that's how a lot of communities do it, and it's because, you know, that's how the structure is. And in Massachusetts, you don't always have a regional structure where communities are used to working with each other. But I think we've seen from the pandemic and even before the pandemic that relationships and partnerships really matter. And it's how you can get the needs of people in your community out there, but also what we talk about, Becky, I feel like at every meeting, is that a lot of this stuff exists. There's a lot of support and programs and just people that are there whose job it is to help somebody out in some way, whether it's the, you know, the village models or the councils on aging or whatever else. So I think amplifying that is really useful. And then any town that wants to replicate some of that stuff can do so. In my breakout group, we had Pelham, and I don't know if that person's still in this call or not. I don't see her around, but anyway, they don't have a building. They don't have a council on aging director. They have an outreach worker, part-time, and a COA board. So they have to kind of figure this stuff out in everybody's spare time, and whoever can, you know, hop on whatever technology. But I can tell you that it works depending on the region, and I think it's just a unique brand that's going to happen in Pioneer Valley just because. And you have hubs of information and services and housing and transportation, and I think you can have this model of mutual support where it's not just every community for themselves, but how can communities actually support each other and regionalize some things, so Pelham's not trying to figure out how they do things as a COA board, but maybe they collaborate with a town to have you know, like I think Deerfield in up in Franklin County and a couple of other communities, there's 3 towns that share a council on aging building, and they have some shared services there. Cindy, help me out. But
I say Deerfield and South Deerfield, that whole immediate area.
yeah.
South of
So I mean,
Greenfield.
there's ways to do it. There's other models even in Massachusetts and all over the place. But you know,
That begs the question, when you say regional, are you talking the service area of the Planning Commission? What's the region we're talking about? Okay,
Yeah, so it's Hampshire and Hampden counties.
Okay, so building on what James was saying, so all the communities already belong to the Planning Commission or in planning. So what works there? Same set of diverse communities. What are the common threads that make that longstanding membership in the commission service area? I mean, I would say these calls alone, you know, we're already regionalized in a sense that you're hosting these calls for everybody, but these calls alone are an invaluable resource.
yep. And one other example within Massachusetts, and I'm not saying this is going to happen in Pioneer Valley, but so the Vineyard is of course its own animal, but there's 6 communities, there's 6 municipalities in the Vineyard. Even on an island, they weren't used to working together, but through the Age Friendly Initiative, they did start to work together, and lo and behold, they combined some support from their planning commission, the Martha's Vineyard Commission, and they actually got each town to contribute funding via their town meeting process. And it's happened, you know, the past several years to support a regional coordinating entity called Healthy Aging Martha's Vineyard to support whatever older adults happen to need on the island. So everybody kind of comes up with their own version of it, but you know, I think it's helpful to the cities. I think it's helpful to the towns. It's just whether or not you all kind of want to do it in chunks or as a whole, you know, service area. But PVPC already does these regional plans and has this infrastructure for supporting communities anyway. So why not do it to include older adults in addition to, you know, community design for all the ways that communities were designed traditionally for kind of able-bodied, you know, young people with families to work and so on and so forth. So why not have it work for everybody?
So maybe the selling point is to what you just said, James, is building on what PVPC is already doing. And this is just adding another dimension.
Right.
And most every municipal leader is certainly aware of their community's involvement with the Planning Commission.
Yeah. And Kathleen mentioned the hill towns. I'm not sure which hill towns she was talking about, but the Northern Hilltown Consortium of Councils on Aging, you know, put together a plan. They got a grant to improve walkability, which you don't really think of a lot with hill towns, but they're figuring it out with Hilltown CDC and, you know, whatever village centers exist. So like, you know, there's ways you can do things that you don't really even realize or that are visible at the current moment.
Yeah.
And we have Giselle and Jennifer here as some service providers, and I wonder how, you know, if this would be helpful for you guys to sort of also share information and resources on the regional level. I mean, you sort of have different service areas, but.
I think it would be helpful. We'll be able to reach more people in different areas and expand our services. So for me, it would be awesome, especially as I'm engaging in new projects, which are more in the hill towns.
Yeah, I think West Mass Elder Care covers, you know, our catchment area covers both of those, Hampden and Hampshire County, not all of it. I mean, Highland Valley covers some, as well as GS Greater Springfield covers some, and you know, there's other so but that's part of our catchment area anyway. So to have us all work together to pool our resources and to provide services for the elders, I mean, that's our mission anyway. So it's kind of what we do.
Do you meet regularly with Highland Valley and Greater Springfield?
No. Okay. Well, I don't, but I don't know if West Mass Elder Care does. I mean, I think because like all the
collect your thoughts, Jen. Here we go. All of our Greater Springfield does all of the protective services for us, and I think they also do for Highland Valley for this area. So they have knowledge of everything, so we do meet and talk about those kind of issues, and they do all that. So I think we kind of blend, our services, all the different ASAPs kind of blend them anyway.
Yeah.
Becky, I would think another interesting area of support maybe come from existing, I'm thinking of community action in Pioneer Valley. There's a lot of overlay in terms of services and some of this stuff we were talking about earlier at home services, just, there's a significant service area overlay.
Yeah, and then there's all the different resource lists like 413 Cares, and then there's another one for Franklin County. So I can see how that's confusing. Do you all use 413 Cares, or do you know what it is? So that's a website where service providers can actually put their information on the website and then get referrals from other service providers. And it's it's supposed to be a central source of information, and it's run out of the Public Health Institute of Western Mass. So we'll have a presentation on that at one of these meetings. I think that might be helpful.
One of the things that was mentioned in our breakout group was that all the ASAPs, they do have an information and referral department. So if you call and ask for information and referral, you can call and ask a question about, say you need to get companion services or home care or transportation or anything. And they, the information and referral department at Highland Valley, at Westmouth Elder Care, at GSS, they can kind of direct you where you need to go and give you it. Either you'll come away with it with a referral, or you'll come away with some more information and numbers to call.
And plus, don't forget the ADRCs. That's also a statewide, and they can help direct if you can't think of which one do I call or what do I call. They can also direct you in terms of aging and disability services. So that's a statewide program that's also available.
Can you clarify, Jennifer, that the INR referrals at Highland Valley, et cetera,